This is Michael Woodward, and this is Season 3, Episode 211 of the Jumblethink Podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast, where we interview amazing entrepreneurs who turn their dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we'll share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest for today's episode is Matthew Iles, CEO and co-founder of Civil. If you're new to the Jumblethink Podcast, or maybe you've been listening to it for a long time and you haven't subscribed to the Jumblethink Podcast, head on over to wherever you like to listen to podcasts and click that magical subscribe button. It helps you never miss an episode of the Jumblethink Podcast. For iTunes, head on over to jumblethink.com/iTunes, and for Spotify, jumblethink.com/Spotify. Take you right to the app, right where you can subscribe. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. I'm super excited about today's episode. Our guest is Matthew Iles. He is the CEO and co-founder of Civil. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him in a moment, but before we do that, we want to thank our sponsors for today's episode, OpportunityInChina.com and Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more about our friends over at Mighty Travels. Is your life crazy busy? Well, I know mine is, and I want to spend as much time in my day doing the things I love to do. One of the things I don't love to do is spend days looking for great airfares. Well, our friends over at MightyTravels.com have made it easy for you to go in, set notifications, to get emails and text messages directly to you so that you never miss a great deal on the flight that you're looking to book. So swing on over to MightyTravels.com/Jumblethink. That's MightyTravels.com/Jumblethink to learn more about how you can get notifications right to your own devices and score the best price tickets for your next trip. And here's a little bit more about our friends over at OpportunityInChina.com.
At the dawn of the 19th century, forward-thinking people moved to the commercial centers of Europe. Moving into the 20th century, America welcomed millions into the land of freedom and opportunity. It is now the 21st century. Many of the successes and fortunes of our generations will be made in China. To learn how you can seize opportunity in China, follow the Opportunity in China podcast. The Opportunity in China podcast is available anywhere podcasts are streamed, or you can visit our website at OpportunityInChina.com.
I am super excited about today's guest. His name's Matthew Iles. He is the CEO and co-founder of Civil. You can find him at civil.co. That's CIVIL.co. You may be wondering, what in the world is Civil? Well, Civil is a community-owned journalism network based on transparency and trust. Civil is the home to a growing number of independent newsrooms from around the world. Their cooperative model allows journalists to capture more of the value they create in a community that prioritizes ethical journalism above all. Some of the newsrooms using their platform include the Colorado Sun, Block Club Chicago, The River, FAQ NYC, EcoWord, Sludge Documented, The Ground Truth Project, Daily, Popula, Global Ground, and Splice. Let's jump into this conversation we had with Matthew Iles, learn a little bit more about his story and the story of Civil. We are here with Matthew Iles. He is doing really cool stuff with his team at Civil. Matthew, thank you so much for being here, taking time out to be with us. I am super excited because I am a big fan of journalism. I'm a big fan of technology, and you have married the two in unique ways. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but first I wanted to start out and hear a little bit about your backstory and how you became an entrepreneur, because this is something that you have a wife named Katie. You both have been very entrepreneurial in that journey. So tell us a little bit about that journey of,
Sure.
of saying, you know what, I'm going to blaze my own trail here.
Only in retrospect did I come to really realize that I had an entrepreneurial streak pretty early on. So like many folks, as they're growing up through high school and college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I first thought I started studying science and then maybe thought I wanted to go into that, and then shifted into sociology and economics and marketing. But really the first entrepreneurial thing I did, and it comes full circle with where we are now, is I started a sports weekly in my high school. Where we actually got in trouble because it was distracting students in class too much, and we were racking up printing costs that the school had initially agreed to foot the bill on, and then it got to be too expensive. But we were knocking on doors in local town like shops selling ads, and it was a really fun experience.
Wow.
Both my parents have entrepreneurial backgrounds as well, so I think I just grew up with this sense of intrigue whenever there was something people were looking for, something people wish they had. I kind of would always go to, well, let's do something about it. That's an opportunity. And it initially, because I didn't have the structure to think about it as entrepreneurship or company building or things like that, I would just start a fun project with friends. As I grew older and as I left college, my first job was at ESPN, and I was excited about that, and it fit, and I kind of felt that way too. It was like, oh, great, I like sports and I like journalism. This is going to work out.
Yeah.
And I think there were a number of reasons why I decided to pivot out of that experience pretty quickly. One of them had to do with sort of sports being probably should have been more of a hobby than a job for me, for example. But one of the things that I quickly also learned was that ESPN is just a massive company, and I felt small, and I felt like my impact was small, and I felt like my ability to change the organization was small, and it all sort of felt not the kind of impact and ability to make change that I wish I could have. So I ended up leaving that. While I was there, I got very interested, though, in digital generally. So I got exposed to web analytics. I got exposed to user experience design, and a whole host of what we now sort of know as digital. And so pretty shortly after that, my wife and I started a digital marketing agency, and that's what I spent most of my 20s doing. So I was running that with her for about 7 years, and we worked with over 40 companies. We grew our team.
Wow.
At one point, we still stayed quite small. We were about an 8-person team at our largest. But that whole experience was basically we worked with startups primarily. So we worked with companies like Thinks and General Assembly, and particularly had a focus on, at the time, that like kind of direct-to-consumer trend where there was a lot of new brands emerging and using digital to get their name out and to do it cheaply and efficiently. So that was just such a fun experience to be able to work with other entrepreneurs. So we had our own business, but our job was effectively to help other entrepreneurs succeed. And that was really fascinating. We got to be exposed to everything from brand building to customer development to what problem are we solving really, and then of course trying to do it all in a way that can pay the bills and grow the business and make more customers happy.
Right.
And so that it was really that experience, starting the agency with my wife, that was the first time I started to think of myself as an entrepreneur. And the first time I really cut my teeth doing it. But I think, like I mentioned, that kind of spirit of trying to start something new had probably been there for some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a fellow digital agency owner, I know the trials of that. There's a lot of fun things about it, but it's hard to make the break in there. And when you're building out a team of employees, there's a whole new level of challenges with payroll and compliance and everything like that. So when did you make the decision that the agency was good, but maybe I have a new idea? And was Civil born out of
So we
the
actually,
agency? How did that whole story start?
We actually tried to start a company from within the agency called Tycoon. That was a software analytics business.
Okay.
So we felt that people weren't
Wow.
talking about data enough in their companies, and we felt it was because of a dearth of tools.
Yeah.
And so that business failed. We tried to fund it out of the agency
Okay.
for about 2 years before we decided that we weren't doing either one well anymore. Sometimes you get into that scenario. So that was So Civil's technically my third business, and I would count the agency as a success that ended up being acquired by a venture studio out of Boston, and then the app company ended up being a failure. And so I like to think that it's good to have a little bit of both. Yeah. So
You're one and one.
But to answer your question, so what happened with the agency, like I mentioned, we got acquired, and that essentially I was now an employee, and did that for a little over a year,
Right.
and the whole experience was meant to kind of give me an opportunity to work on bigger things, but also to reflect and think about what might be the next chapter. And I was fascinated by platform businesses.
Okay.
So a platform business is...
What does that mean when you say platform
You
business?
can also think of it as a two-sided marketplace, typically, or sometimes a three-sided marketplace. But what it means is Airbnb and
Okay.
Uber, these are good examples of platform businesses. It's where what you're really doing is connecting
Okay.
buyers and sellers really, really effectively and efficiently. You're not actually
Yeah.
producing anything. So Airbnb doesn't own hotel rooms or hotel buildings, but they are definitely
Yeah.
competing with the hotel business. And those businesses are magnificently scalable, and they are considered to be native to digital. You couldn't kind of create an Airbnb business pre-internet.
Yeah.
And they are not only significant
Right.
at scaling, they're really, really defensible. So the idea is that they become better as they grow. There's more data, there's more customers, more buyers get more sellers get more buyers, and it becomes incredibly difficult to imagine competing with them. So if I pitch you an idea for a home rental business right now, you'd be like, well, nobody needs that. Everybody already has Airbnb, and they're really, really difficult to which is a strategic sort of advantage. So I was really fascinated by platform businesses and wanted to build one. And I wanted to build one that would have hopefully a massive impact on the world. Those are sort of my criteria. And the third criteria was I needed to pick something that I thought I actually would be any good at. So it
always
needed
a
to be
plus.
something that was somewhat futuristic, I thought, if it was going to actually be compelling in 5-10 years. So
Yeah.
I tried to tick through the list of the things that were sort of on the trend, and
Yeah.
it was like, well, I don't know about robotics or about AI or about some of these things that are obviously highly compelling and are going to be a part of the next 5 to 10 years, but I'm not the right person to lead those organizations. And when I reflected on my past, journalism has been something that I've been passionate about from an early age, and have studied as a citizen. And then digital media is something that I felt I was professionally expert at, given my experience running the agency and getting sort of the inside scoop on Google and Facebook and things like that. So I felt I understood the current state of media, digital media, and how those companies work as media platforms. And I became, and then through my knowledge about journalism, I was increasingly worried about the industry. Again, as a citizen, and so that sort of, I put all those together and decided. Put all those together and decided that I wanted to create a new kind of media platform dedicated to journalism.
I love that. It's a really cool evolution. Wow, I love that. It's a really cool evolution of where do I go from here, and then coming up with problems, and also knowing the skill set you had and how that could apply. But from early on, you have been intentional about building a team around this concept. Was that to leverage the skills of others? Was it because Like, why did you find that significant to bring others into
Problem
the
was
story
too big.
early?
So and I certainly recognized that.
Okay.
I only knew like a piece of the puzzle. So I should also say
Right.
the culture is very important to me and to us at Civil. And if we were going to create a new media platform dedicated to the ideals of journalism and the impact it can have on the world and its people, you need special people to make something like that come to life. It's not a simple widget company, and it's not certainly a profit or bust kind of company. And it required so many different types
Yeah.
of expertise. So as we began to develop what our technical strategy would be, blockchain technology, media and data technology, very specific skill sets. Especially when we started this, very few people in the world knew about blockchain or how to actually work within it. And then, while I understand journalism from
Right.
an outsider's perspective in terms of the industry and somewhat how it works, I definitely didn't know the customer well enough to make all those assumptions on my own. So it was critical
Okay.
that we recruited real journalists who really understood the business and the day-to-day. So early on,
Okay.
my job, even still now, and for as long as I'm in this position, leading Civil, is chief recruiter, and that's been a huge part of our, I think, success to date,
Okay.
is bringing the right people in.
So when you say chief recruiter, are you talking about the team members you bring in?
Correct.
So when you say chief recruiter, are you talking
Team
about the
members,
team
yeah.
members you bring in? Talking about the journalists you're working
the-
with? Like
at
okay.
this stage, hopefully there's a point in which Civil becomes organically, like it grows organically, and the whole part of our whole premise is that the company
Yeah.
should not be necessary for the vision to take hold in the long run. But at the moment, given the immaturity of the project, the team is very, very crucial
Okay.
to our success. So, yeah, chief recruiter meant bringing in the best and most passionate minds that we could find to help bring this to life.
Yeah, very cool. So let's talk a little bit more about Yeah, very cool. So let's talk a little bit more about Civil and the pieces of it, because it is a very complex idea. It can be boiled down simply, but you have, of course,
It's a lot. Blockchain is doing a
which
lot
is
of
a
things,
funding
actually,
mechanism.
and I don't even know that I would start with funding.
Okay.
But continue.
Okay. You have, of course, the end consumer who is consuming data, the news stories that are being shared, and then you have the reporters who are, of course, the journalists who are telling those stories. First off, how would you really define Civil and the mission of Civil in that mix of who you're serving
so
and the community?
we're a
that you're
community-run
building?
journalism project, a decentralized network of newsrooms.
Okay.
And our mission is to advance trust and sustainability throughout journalism around the world. So that's the broad
Yeah.
and very
Okay.
concise description. When you start to unpack it, what we mean, so trust and sustainability, we believe, are the two crises currently facing the industry and thus the public. And they're born in part by the same
Right.
problems. The way in which information content flows through the internet today is very unchecked. So it's incredibly difficult for end consumers, the public, to really know the source of what they're reading.
So like the BuzzFeed story that just came out. Yeah. So like the BuzzFeed story that just came out with Trump and everything like that. Whether it's true or not, it can't be confirmed because no one's actually giving data to back it up other than there's a source. And then Mueller, of course, is saying, well, that's not completely right. And so we're not getting a good picture of the news
and
because we don't know what
that I would
the
consider
actual
even
story
like-
is.
That's a conventional people for as long as there's been reporters, there's been people who refute what reporters say. but I'm even just talking to the sort of fake news and disinformation and the ability for people to manipulate products like Twitter and Facebook and Google and bots and things like that, which is pretty pervasive and especially because these platforms start to either direct you into echo chambers or you are unwittingly able to self-select yourself into those. We start to get into situations where literally two halves of the country believe different things about the same event. And it's because they're consuming news from different sources, and never the twain shall meet. So that has a lot to do with plumbing, like literally how the content is sifting around the internet.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like in that case that the platform itself is not being a steward of building trust, but also building a platform that serves the broader good. It sounds like they're... I always say that all news is biased because we all have a worldview and we filter it through, but it sounds like this bias is even taking it to the nth degree where it's like you don't even know it's biased because you're so in different
and I think
rooms
what you
of
said
the
about
house, and you don't even know that it's going
on. Not really exerting any kind of that filter or setting a standard for what's trustworthy or not or things like that it leads me to the second crisis, which is sustainability. So the predominant platforms, business model today is content creators put content into these channels because it gives them distribution and it gives them access to people. It's where people get their information, or they get entertained, or they, entertain themselves for a minute or longer. And then the user interacts with that content, providing the platforms with really valuable data about what they like and who they are. And then they show them ads. And that's it. So whether you are reacting to a investigative piece, a cat video, or a conspiracy theory, it actually doesn't really matter to the platform, as long as it's helping them serve you an ad the next time around that you click on, and they can charge the advertiser a good rate. So what is paramount to them is that you become addicted, frankly, and that you check your feed constantly, that you keep coming back. And so that's the other thing, is showing you things that you might disagree with, showing you things from the other side, quote unquote, is detrimental to their business model, because you might actually tune that out. They're encouraged by their business model to show you more of the same and to drive you further towards the things that you already believe. So this kind of confirmation bias, because that's where they make their money. And what's worse about all of that is fractions of what they make actually get back to the content creators. And that's not even just journalists, that's period. Everybody who makes content. So the people creating the predominance of value on the platforms are back to my description of platforms, the sellers of content are the ones creating the predominance of value, just in the same way that it's the people who put up their houses that create all the value on Airbnb. The people are there, meaning users are there, the buyers of content are there to be entertained, to be informed, to stay connected, whatever it is. But the platform, the company that's making it possible, Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc., is capturing the largesse of that value. So I mentioned there's two-sided marketplaces and there are three-sided marketplaces. Two-sided marketplaces tend to occur where there's physical goods or physical experiences, Airbnb, Uber. Three-sided marketplaces are media. So the third side in media is advertisers. And that's the person who actually pays. So you get a free Facebook experience because you're the product. That's sometimes the joke. And you're essentially giving your data away for free, and then they're monetizing that through the use of advertising. And so now we have Google and Facebook, two companies that are among the largest companies in the world, hundreds of billions of dollars in market capitalization, at the same time that we have tens, at least, of journalism outfits just in the last year that are slashing staff. And so that is what we've set out to try to solve. The way in which information is disseminated and consumed online is unlikely to change. There's a lot of good that these platforms provide: speed, discoverability, recommendation algorithms, etc. So they're not totally. We can't go back to print newspapers, right? But we have to solve the fact that these technologies were not they were not and Mark Zuckerberg will say things like, we didn't think about this stuff when we were in our college dorm room, because it was just it's a new world, and they've obviously become so systemic to society itself. So that's the problem. It's a complex problem to begin with. You talked about civil being complex as a solution, which is accurate, but what I think is a problem, but the general public is becoming more aware of all the time, is just how pervasive this is, and how I think at times pernicious the activities of some of these platforms can be. They're either abdicating responsibility altogether, they're acting in a highly centralized fashion, meaning we'll make the decision and you'll like it, no questions asked, and we don't really care what you think.
We hear that all the time with the algorithm changes, and whether it's an advertiser, a content creator, or a consumer going,
and it's
I
just
don't
like
see
they made
what
a
I
decision
want to
and
see
that's it, and you
anymore.
weren't
Where did
involved.
it go?
Or worse, there's cases of like real, actual pernicious activity of companies like Facebook more recently becoming known for, the selling of data outside of what you even signed in the terms and conditions that you never read. So like they're even breaking their own rules or doing things sort of that are just demonstrate the lengths to which they'll go to make money in a world that's basically predicated on harvesting your data without your knowledge, and certainly without your compensation. And so that is the world, and it's been going on for a long time, and the scale of the problem isn't slowing down. And in fact, it's getting worse, especially as journalism outfits are becoming further and further under duress. And we're seeing it now play out, not just in sort of we feel, our hearts go out to people who lose their jobs over things like this. We're, I think, really beginning to see the impact on the world when there's less journalism in it, and it's not good.
I want to continue this conversation in segment 2, but as we wrap up this first segment, we always like to ask, how are you finding purpose in what you do?
That is unfolding every day on a global stage. Coming face to face with journalists in my backyard or around the world who are nobody becomes a journalist to make money. Every single journalist is following a calling. They are incredibly principled people. They're incredibly passionate people, and they run towards the blaze when everybody else is running away, because they feel they must, because someone has to report the truth, and the world must know what's really going on. And it's one thing to read about people like that, and it's one thing to, see an important piece come out in the news and feel good that like society's working the way it's supposed to. But when you actually get to work with them every day, and when your ideas and your progress are giving them hope, or giving them, or sparking their own creativity and ideas about how we can collaborate and hopefully do something new, it's tremendously gratifying and motivating to wake up every day and know that like we have so much more work to do, and we've got a growing number of people who are on our side to get it done.
What is one challenge you're currently working to overcome? What is one challenge you're currently working to overcome?
The complexity of our message
civil?
and the complexity of our product. We've chosen to use a technology that I believe will be highly prevalent, but not for a matter of years. We're choosing a technology that's complicated to explain and even more complicated to use, but it has tremendous potential, and we think that it's really important that we be pushing at this bleeding edge. So our greatest challenge is how we recognize that the tech isn't going to be like slick and easy, like everybody wants it to be in the short term, and how we sort of bridge that and how we bring people with us,
Right.
with the knowledge that what we're really building out is years in the making.
What's the next big goal you have for Civil? Wow.
Launching the right
What's the
way.
next big goal you have for Civil?
So we had a
Okay.
failed launch in the fall, and we learned a tremendous amount, and we were highly and rightfully scrutinized, and we've taken a lot of time to reconsider everything, to reconsider what it is we're trying to do and exactly how we're going to help those who are in support of us conceptually to join us practically. And so our greatest goal is to actually get the products and technology that we've been working on for over a year out into the wild for people to see and feel and touch, and for us to see how the experiment begins to unfold.
Super cool. We will be back with Matthew to go so much deeper. Super cool. We will be back with Matthew to go so much deeper into the story of Civil, how it works, how you can become a part of the story, and much, much more. Jumblethink is more than just a podcast. We also have some great free resources over at jumblethink.com that you can download that will help you along the journey of chasing big ideas and dreams. If you're ready to take the next step and make those dreams and ideas a reality, we invite you to Idea Camps, our 3-day events to help you come up with a roadmap to turn your dreams and ideas into reality. Simply head on over to jumblethink.com/ideacamps to learn more. We also want to take a moment right now and thank our sponsors for today's episode, OpportunityInChina.com and Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more about our friends over at Mighty Travels. One of my favorite things to do is to travel, but often I am spending hours, maybe even days, looking through travel searches for the right airfare. Our friends over at Mighty Travels make it so much easier. You can go in, set your desired location when you want to go, and get notifications sent to you via email and text message so that you can grab those special deals when they're there. If you want to save money, up to even like $190 per ticket, Mighty Travels is the place to check out. So swing on over to mightytravels.com/jumblethink to learn more about how you can access some great notifications to get the best fares for your trip. Again, that's mightytravels.com/jumblethink. Go on over, check them out, and start saving on your trips. We also want to thank our friends over at OpportunityInChina.com. Here's a little bit more about them. Have you been looking for a way to change your career or social prospects? Do you see the world around you changing and haven't quite figured out what path you should take? You are not alone in seeking opportunity. Visit OpportunityInChina.com for access to scholarships to attend university in China. Or if you have a bachelor's degree already, OpportunityInChina.com provides access to jobs in the educational sector all across China. Now, working in China is not only often well paid, but it will place you among 1/5 of the world's population, boosting your social network and bringing you more deeply into the story of globalization, ultimately opening up doors you never knew existed. Seize your opportunity now. Visit their website for more information at OpportunityInChina.com. By the way, they have a great podcast that talks about this very topic. Simply search for Opportunity in China Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Now let's jump back into today's episode. We are back with Matthew to go so much deeper into the story of Civil. Before we get rolling, we always like to know, how can people find and connect with Civil? How can they find and connect with you?
Oh, awesome. So our website is civil.co.
Okay.
You can also find us on Twitter at Civil.
All right.
And I'm at Matthew Iles. And you can also email me at matthew@joincivil.com.
Very cool. We'll have all of that in episode notes. So wherever you're listening, it's right there. Just check it out. Copy the link, paste it in your browser, go there and connect with them. They're doing cool stuff, which we're going to talk about right now so you can learn more and why and how you should get involved. So first off, we talked about it being decentralized, and we started talking a little bit about how you're incorporating blockchain and crypto into this this product that you're building, this platform you're building. I want to go deeper into that because the initial thought for many, and I think I could say for myself, is that when we think blockchain, we think cryptocurrency. But you are doing so much more with utilizing this technology than I even realized. So tell us a little bit about how you're utilizing blockchain and your strategy for building this platform, for building community, whatever else you're using it for.
So first off, let me say, building on what we talked about in the last segment, which I think we kind of explored the problem set.
Right.
The principles that we're focused on are own your data,
Okay.
own your content,
Okay.
own the network.
All right.
So what does that mean? And we're going to build into that. That's
Yeah.
not all on day one, but that's the premise. And what it means is to own your data. Every user, every person on Civil, very soon, we want you to be the sole decision maker over who has access to your data, what data they have access to, how it's used, and if there's any kind of compensation or monetization of that data by third parties, that you should have transparent knowledge of that, and you should have access to the potential of actually earning money for that.
So when you say that earning money for your content, that makes sense. But the transparency of advertisers and sponsors is a huge deal, because that could show bias, that could show influence in how you tell the story. Is that what you're saying about, like, saying, hey, this story was sponsored by so-and-so, or so-and-so is an advertiser with our outlet, and so...
I just mean even more. I mean, yes, and more expansively.
Okay.
So when you are on Facebook and
Right.
you follow a certain news organization, or you like a certain article, or you share a certain post, that is data that's associated with you on Facebook. And Facebook uses that data to serve you the next thing and the next thing. And sometimes it's an ad, but sometimes it's another article. But that's all about your preferences.
Okay.
That's what I mean. So
Okay.
including things like definitely I'll get to sort of the where is this coming from piece. But I mean, every user on Civil, every reader, we want one day to be in full possession of their data profile. And that they should be able to choose who has access to that data, including my company.
Okay.
So that's number one. Number two, so your data is yours,
Yeah.
and you should be the sole decision maker over who has it and who uses it and why. And if money's made off of it, you should get a cut.
Okay.
Number one. Number two is own your content. So
Yeah.
in this case, the content piracy is still a very prevalent thing.
Okay.
The AP works with thousands of photographers around the world. You are supposed to license photos from
Yeah.
the Associated Press.
Yeah.
And still, roughly, they estimate between 60 to 70% of their photographs are republished without their permission. And therefore, they are not getting credit for it, both the AP as well as the individual photographer. And they're not getting compensated for it.
Right. I have a friend that is a photographer, and he's experienced that with shooting wildfires in Northern California, where he's like, no, you didn't get permission to use my photo, even though you've just run it on your specific outlet.
Yeah, exactly. And that stinks, right?
Yeah.
like if you're getting the shot, especially in dangerous situations like that, that takes skill, that takes risk, that takes its own kind of entrepreneurial drive.
Right.
And like any craft, any service provided, you should be compensated for it.
Yeah.
But because data on the internet, and photograph is just a kind of data, is so easily tossed around, and people can just republish stuff without permission and without I guess punishment or penalty. It happens all the time.
Right.
So on Civil, we want to create a paradigm where all content creators, all journalists, all news organizations own their content outright. You have the ability to republish it. You have the ability to license it. You have the ability to syndicate it if you're another outlet or if you're just an individual interested in doing that. But you must abide by the terms of the creator.
Okay.
Is our goal.
Yeah.
And the third one is own the network.
All right.
And what we mean by that is going back to the notion of platforms sort of just making a decision however they want to change an algorithm, to do this, to do that. That's centralization, right?
Okay.
That's the idea of a centralized corporation making decisions on behalf of the whole.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that, one of the first decisions I made in sort of developing the concept for Civil was that it was going to be a media platform dedicated to journalism, and that means that there's a higher content bar there than there is in other platforms where you can post photos of your lunch or whatever, right? This meant actually defining a set of standards. What is acceptable content?
Right.
What is journalism? What are the ethics involved? What's unacceptable? What's acceptable? And thankfully, journalism has this, as an industry, has this pretty well defined. There's a lot of pretty well accepted criteria for what is ethical behavior and what is acceptable journalism. So that gave us a blueprint. But then the next question is, well, who decides? Who decides if your content meets these standards or not? And if that was going to be me, God forbid, or if that was going to be our company,
Yeah.
then what's really that different about from the current landscape? Mm-hmm. The decision we felt should be decentralized. It should be made by the public who is maintaining or bought in, so to speak, into the network. So we wanted to make it possible for every user, every participant in Civil to have the ability to have a say and share in how the project's day-to-day operations unfold and how it evolves over the long run. So to use the analogy, if an algorithm, quote unquote, or if a core change is to be made to Civil, it needs to be voted on by all of its members.
Okay. And a member would be the journalists that are using it. They would be the end user, the consumer of that content. That would be the Civil team. That'd be everyone.
Yes, the defining factor of what would make you a voting member is whether or not you own Civil tokens.
Okay.
So that's that's sort of my first use of a blockchain term.
Okay.
Yeah. So absolutely, they could and should be news organizations and journalists, and we have a whole program set up where we want to provide tokens to worthy journalists and news organizations who seek to join our platform.
Yeah.
We also want the other side of the equation. We want the public who wants to support journalists to be involved as well.
Yeah.
Everyday citizens and readers. And so that as well. I own Civil tokens for sure. Our company has some, partners have some. But the idea is that we, the Civil Media Company, do not have 100% of that vote. And instead, increasingly, we want it to be as distributed and decentralized as possible. Mm-hmm. So when you add those things up together, those are the principles that guide a lot of our decision making. From a product perspective, is own your data, own your content, own the network.
Okay.
And what we think that ultimately adds up to is a media platform dedicated to ethical journalism.
Mm-hmm.
That is fundamentally run by the people.
Okay.
We need to figure out how we build business applications on top of that, but the underlying, here's another blockchain sort of term, the underlying protocol, which is the we literally, the founding document of our platform is called the Civil Constitution.
Right, I've read it actually. Yeah.
Great. So that's the thing. When we vote, so you, for example, if you have Civil tokens, you can propose a change to that Civil Constitution, and we can all vote to amend the Civil Constitution. So,
wow.
And now that is the law of the land.
Okay. So
that's an example of what we mean, and we think that's important because it's a total shift. Now, for example, so at the moment, the idea is that news organizations are going to be held accountable to the Civil Constitution, but the idea is that any business application, any organization that's trying to, quote unquote, build on top of Civil needs to abide by this same set of standards, including my own company.
Yeah.
So if my own company tries to do something in the future that doesn't seem to meet with the spirit of the platform, then the public would be able to do something about it.
Wow.
They'd be able to potentially kick us off, or to change the Constitution in some way to close a loophole, or whatever the issue is. We are not the sole arbiter of what is the fundamental rules of the platform.
Yeah.
And we think that goes a long way towards engendering the kind of trust that we hope to obtain. So that's like the high level sort of principles that guide us.
Yeah.
Now to your question about blockchain and what's up with blockchain and why.
Yeah.
So the crypto and cryptocurrency is probably more interesting to us than the currency.
Yeah.
And then the crypto just stands for cryptographic.
Yeah.
And what that means, there's 4 cool attributes that blockchain technology provides.
Yeah.
And it has tons of use cases that go beyond ICOs and currencies.
Yeah.
So the 4 attributes are it's incredibly private. So
Okay.
it's a really interesting new paradigm where when you have a wallet, or when you have a address on the blockchain, which is sort of like thinking about like having an email address, for example, or a user ID, only you can sign on behalf of that address.
Right.
So only you can conduct a transaction or do a piece of work according to that thing, including like no one can recover your password.
Yeah.
There is no blockchain Inc. There's no Ethereum Corp.
Yeah.
It's a fully decentralized technology, and the benefit of that is that you own and are the sole authority over everything that is yours that you bring into this space. So that's how we can get to things like own your data. There's a notion of self-sovereign identity that is really prevalent throughout the space. Another one, a similar variant of that, is universal identity.
Okay.
The idea that when you can bring data into the space
Yeah.
that's associated with your address, your ID,
Yeah.
and only you can authorize who can have access to that and who can use it.
Okay.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
The next thing is that it's also incredibly public.
Yeah.
So it's a very kind of a weird dichotomy. So anything you do choose to quote unquote publish to the blockchain is now public for everyone to see.
Okay.
This is very important for building that kind of decentralized trust. So when for example, a news organization publishes on Civil, they have their own address that's associated with their newsroom.
Right.
They sign a transaction that commits the content of their article to their newsroom address. Mm-hmm. And what that means is it's now on the public record that news organization is the author of this piece.
Yeah.
And because no one can sign on behalf of that address except for the owners, essentially, of that news organization, everybody knows you should never be able to come across an article that is spoofed or hacked by that name.
Right.
It has to be by them.
Right.
And the public nature of it keeps everybody accountable. Everybody would easily be able to detect, say, a fraud.
Yeah.
So that has some really cool things that you can kind of combine those 2 aspects of incredibly private, incredibly public nature. It's immutable.
Okay.
So once you put anything onto the blockchain, it's impossible to change history.
Yeah.
You can only add to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that has, obviously, as you can imagine, with something like journalism, the notion of sort of a permanent record.
Yeah.
It's as close to a permanent record as the internet can provide.
Okay.
And that gets me to the last thing, which is it's permanent. So blockchain will live as long as the internet does.
Yeah.
And that seems to have a probably pretty good lifespan. So as long as there's a globe of computers, there's going to be blockchain at this point now. And so it is as permanent and immutable as a record as you can get. So what Civil's doing is a handful of things at the same time.
Yeah.
So we have a product that we're launching in February called the Civil Registry.
Okay.
In order to be, quote unquote, a civil newsroom, in order to be on the platform, you must get onto the Civil Registry.
Okay.
To do this, you have to form a newsroom. This is all on our app. You'll come to our website. You'll fill out a form, almost like if you're creating a blog or something like that with a group of people.
Yeah.
And so you give it a name. You have to list what the mission of the newsroom is. You have to list if there's any conflicts of interest, how you intend to make money. You have to state who the the sort of key stakeholders of the news organization are, the editors, the owners, etc.
Yeah.
You have to sign the civil constitution, and so literally there's going to be your name signing a piece of a document pledging to abide by these rules, committed to the blockchain forever. And then you have to stake civil tokens to the registry. And what this means is you are going to be in possession of a piece of the overall network.
Okay.
Going back to that notion of
of
owning the network.
Yeah.
So when you have civil tokens, there's 100 million of them that will ever exist.
All right.
And we can't change that number. It's fixed by the blockchain. We'll make that forever the case.
Yeah. Valuation of that token changes, but the number of tokens doesn't.
Correct.
Yeah. Supply and demand basics.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you will own some piece of the network, and you have to put a certain number of them. It's called staking.
Yeah.
And you're essentially putting them into an escrow kind of contract, and you're saying, I promise to be good by this much.
Yeah.
And if you find me to be in violation of the rules, I acknowledge that I can lose these tokens, and they can be distributed to the people who discovered my violation.
You're putting something into
skin in the game.
Almost, a collateral,
correct,
if you will.
Yep. So there's a bunch of different blockchain tools that I just touched on. So So each newsroom has its own address.
Yeah.
Which proves that they are who they are, and only they can act on their behalf.
Yep.
When they are publishing to the blockchain, when they sign the civil constitution, there is now a permanent record that they have committed to this set of ethics. When they stake civil tokens, and tokens are only possible now because blockchain makes it possible to create scarce digital assets.
Yeah.
They are putting skin in the game. They are putting this value at risk.
Yeah.
And that full registry, which is the voting mechanism, which is, hey, I think that you did violate the civil constitution. Now I'm going to challenge you with my own civil tokens. And now, hey, everyone in the civil community is going to vote with their tokens.
Yeah.
Only possible because of blockchain. So the votes are committed, tallied, immutable, unhackable because of blockchain technology.
Wow.
Now, when you earlier said we're using blockchain to fund the project, absolutely. There's like a tactic, or there's a concept called crypto economics.
Yeah.
We're trying to create this notion of skin in the game. We're trying to incentivize all this participation. So it's absolutely necessary that the tokens are imbued with real value, so that people feel like, hey, if I do a great job and if we work hard to keep this place healthy and successful, these tokens are going to increase in value. That's an important consideration.
Yeah.
But so many components along the way are also leveraging blockchain to make the whole concept hang together.
Absolutely. We're running out a little bit of time, so I want to get through a couple last questions here pretty quickly. The first one is, who can sign up as a journalist? Are we looking at accredited journalists, or like it can be anyone, and then there's just the accountability of the community?
Correct.
All right. So, and is their content, like, are they able to then monetize that content, and how does that work?
Yeah, so newsrooms are able to monetize using every traditional means available to them. So some newsrooms rely on paywalls, some newsrooms rely on memberships, some just take donations, some obviously use ads. We are not a replacement to any of those. Our next sort of phase after we get through this initial launch is to build more or additional revenue generating tools. So licensing and syndication is going to be one. We want to improve that aspect of the business model. So essentially, news organizations are not one size fits all. They can bring their existing business models to the platform, and then we intend to hopefully bring some new ones as well in the near future.
Super cool. And then how can individuals listening to this right now, you're in this new launch, we're going to talk about that in a moment, but how can they start getting involved in the civil community?
Yeah, awesome. So when we launch in February, you'll be able to not just purchase civil tokens, but when you do, your money is directed to the Civil Foundation. Okay. So I'm the CEO of the Civil Media Company, which is a for-profit blockchain software business that's going to build all these tools to make this all possible. But we have a sister independent nonprofit organization, which is a journalism, grant making, and research organization led by Vivian Schiller, who's the former CEO of NPR, who your contributions are going to the Civil Foundation. So not only are you just getting this new cryptocurrency in exchange for your money to then be able to use it within our system as a voter, you will also be making sure that your money is going to a great cause. So the Civil Foundation is going to be focused on being highly transparent and directed with where its funds are going to try to make as great an impact as possible within the journalism industry around the world. And you'll become a part of that experience. So we'll have sort of members-only newsletter, members-only Slack community, where you'll be in touch with both our team and the foundation itself for regular updates on the latest and greatest within the civil community. So you're really becoming a part of the community through that purchase of civil tokens, and we have dedicated support staff to kind of help you learn all the new tools and trades. But the idea is really to bring you as close as possible to the journalists in the community and to the team who's trying to make this all possible, and we want that kind of participation.
Absolutely. Now you've pivoted. There's a great article. We'll link to that in the episode notes too about the pivot and realigning back to the vision. You wrote it, and it's really, really good. That captures where you've been and kind of where you're going. So in this pivot, what are you looking forward to in the future? What does that pivot mean to you, and how are you bringing it back to journalism?
Last year was such a wild year for blockchain and cryptocurrency, and I think despite all our best efforts, I think we made a lot of good decisions to sort of avoid a lot of the hype and the hoopla, but I think that we took too many things for granted, and I think we borrowed too many playbooks that didn't make sense for us. So we abdicated responsibility for aspects of the whole product experience that we should have never done.
Wow.
And so, we did a token sale that looked a lot like any other kind of ICO kind of project on the outside, and it became the focus. People wanted to know about our price mechanism and how much we were trying to generate, and all these, all these things that ultimately had nothing to do with why we were there.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the user experience was not good at all.
Yeah.
Because we had made those decisions. So we are coming back now with a much greater focus on journalism.
Okay.
The idea is that we don't even really want you to think about buying tokens in and of themselves. What you're doing is you're supporting a cause, and you're becoming a member of this cause-driven community.
Yeah.
So I mentioned at the top, this is a community-run project, and we need people who are committed to supporting journalism to be a part of our community.
Yeah.
And that's what this is going to be all about. So when we launch, there'll be a variety of a growing list of newsrooms that you can meet and access and read and get exposed to, which is ultimately why we're here. There'll be community experiences for you to be able to engage with others around the world who are committed to our cause. You'll be able to meet the journalists who are part of the project. You'll be able to influence where the project goes, and not just indirectly, but literally through the use of tokens. And there won't be any of this kind of crazy 4 weeks or we make it or we don't kind of stuff, which just was a complete and utter distraction. So this time around, it's just going to be completely focused on what are the problems that journalism is facing, what are we trying to do about it as a community, and how you can get involved to support that.
Super cool. Remind people again how they can find and connect with Civil and you.
So our website is civil.co, and you can reach out to me at Matthew. My email is matthew@civil.co.
Perfect. We will be right back for rapid fire questions. It is so hard to believe that we are 5 episodes into season 3, and over the last couple weeks, we've had some killer guests and talked about some amazing topics. Some of our past guests have included Kendrick Gwynn, the CEO and co-founder of Republic, Ben Flanner, the CEO and co-founder of Brooklyn Grange. We've talked about the why behind Jumblethink and the power of boredom. Later this week, we are talking about the power of wonder, and next week on the podcast, I'm super excited. we have our friend Erwin McManus coming on the podcast. He is the lead pastor of Mosaic. He is a best-selling author who has a new book coming out later this month. And then later in the week, we are bringing our friend Phoebe Mrochek on the podcast. We are talking about a lot of cool things around identity in that episode. The next couple weeks, we have incredible guests lined up. You don't want to miss any of them. Well, what do you need to do to stay up to date? Simply head on over to jumblethink.com, sign up for our newsletter. You'll be up to date on giveaways, great free resources we're launching, along with keeping up to date on incredible guests and topics we're talking about here on the podcast. You can, of course, follow us on all of your favorite social channels. And beyond that, make sure you subscribe to the Jumblethink podcast. Leave us a rating and a review to let others and us know what you think of the podcast. Now let's jump into rapid fire questions with today's guest, Matthew Iles.
Levez seulement le bras pour mettre l'aiguille sur le disque.
We are back with Matthew, and we're going to do rapid fire questions. Are you ready for rapid fire questions?
Oh, yeah, bring it on.
All right, first question is, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Jeez. Probably a football player and maybe an astronaut.
Okay. What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
Make wireframes.
Okay. What is one big lie about entrepreneurship or misconception that you want to break?
There's no such thing as an overnight success.
So true. What do you want your legacy to be?
That Civil made an impact.
Okay. And what inspires you?
Journalists.
What is one book you think every dreamer or entrepreneur should read and why?
Hard Thing About Hard Things.
That's a newer book, right?
Yeah.
I've been wanting to check that out. I haven't read it yet, so
That's
I'm excited.
terrific.
How do you define success?
Being happy and fulfilled in what you're doing.
What is one trend you are currently excited about?
Blockchain. Decentralization.
Okay. What is one habit you find helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
Meditation.
What's one thing you wish you would have known when you started out?
The importance of great people. You can't do it alone.
Yeah, so good. We always say isolation is the death march of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I think I would still be working in the blockchain space.
Okay.
Working to figure out how to improve the user experience.
Yeah. And our final rapid fire question for today is, what is one dream you are still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Starting a family.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. As we wrap up today's episode, we always like to leave our guests have a final thought for our audience. So speak to them right now. What would you like to say to them?
The world, there's a lot of things not going right in the world today.
Right.
And always being realistic, but positive and optimistic and solutions oriented. One, helps you get through the day.
Yeah.
And two, is so needed.
Cool.
If we don't do something about the situations that we find ourselves in, then they're unlikely to change. So I would just hope that everybody out there, we're trying to make our own dent in the universe with what we're doing. And if you're inspired by it, we hope that you'll join what we're doing. But whatever problem you think is vexing you the most, do something about it and don't delay.
Very cool. Matthew, thank you so much for taking time out and sharing your story. We wish you the best. We wish Civil the best. We're super excited about what you're doing. We can't wait to see where it goes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Once again, we want to thank today's guest, Matthew Iles, for taking time out and sharing his story along with the story of Civil. Make sure you go check out what they're doing. You can find all of those links in the episode notes. We also want to thank our sponsors for today's episode, Mighty Travels and OpportunityInChina.com. It's so great that they're supporting this podcast. Make sure you go check out what they're doing and how they can help you get to the next level to chase those dreams and ideas you have also. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with my final thoughts for today's episode. There is a lot we can learn from Matthew's story and the story of Civil. One of those great things we can learn is that There are often problems facing this world. Maybe it's facing just us and our family or our community, or maybe it's facing a larger population, like the story of Civil and how they're changing the world of journalism. Now, they saw a problem, and they saw something that needed to be solved. They didn't have a clear roadmap on how to get there, but they began to take steps to make it happen. They used new technologies, emerging technologies. They used critical thinking and approaches to innovate on age-long problems. You can do the same with your ideas and dreams, too. Sometimes there's not a clear roadmap for a future. It's an uncharted course, and you're on it. Well, you need to still step out. Think creatively. Think innovatively. And look at the problems that you're facing with new, fresh eyes. Use technologies and things that didn't exist 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Bring the right team together, just like Matthew did with Civil. And face the world. Face the problem head on and say, you know what? We may fail, we may succeed, but no matter what, we're willing to take the risk. We're willing to step forward and solve these problems. I believe you're created for something great. We call it created purpose, and I want you to find your created purpose. So take a moment today and think about yourself. Think about who you were created to be. Think about the problems you see facing the world, and start thinking about the solutions you have to offer. Now it's your turn. Get out there, chase those dreams and ideas, and change the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.